South Africa scores high in a global review of the most innovative countries on the continent. And this is according, of course, to the Global Innovation Index, which was released last week, Friday. South Africa ranking very closely to Mauritius and Senegal. And on the line now to give us more information on what the index tells us and how Africa has performed on that particular index, joining us on the line now is a representative from the World Innovation, the World International Innovation Organization, WIPO, that's it, the World International Property Organization. That's me jumping over my words there. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. Maybe let's get a sense first of what is the Global Innovation Index and what are we trying to measure?
Thank you very much, and good evening from Geneva. The Global Innovation Index is a tool to measure the innovation performance of 141 economies around the world. It is designed to help policymakers to better understand how one national innovation system compares to another. Why focus on innovation? Because history suggests that innovation is a key ingredient for sustained economic growth, and many policymakers around the world have recognized that.
Carsten, how do you measure it? I mean, we know that there are lots of good ideas, and then some of these ideas are put into practice, some of them below the radar, very few of them world-shattering. How do you actually get out there and get the information?
That's a good question. The Global Innovation Index recognizes the multifaceted nature of innovation. Innovation happens, of course, in high-tech research labs, as one would expect to be, but it also happens in the everyday activities of small and medium-sized enterprises and in the ever-growing service economy. The index, therefore, adopts a broad measurement framework. In total, it relies on 79 indicators, capturing a large number of innovation inputs and outputs.
That being said, Carsten, what is the policy directive that you're advising emerging market policymakers to take?
Well, one is to invest in the various pillars that make up an innovation system, which sometimes means investing money in education, infrastructure, and research, and sometimes it means investing into building institutions and the right regulatory framework. Another important focus has to be patience and perseverance. Innovation systems aren't built overnight, but require long-term commitment as well as a stable and predictable policy framework.
Carsten, looking at the numbers, the best countries in the world at this, the top 3, the top 5, and so on, surely the value of an index like this is you then start saying, well, what can we deduce from a country that's at the top of the list as to what they are doing to encourage it? Who's at the top, and what are the lessons from the people at the top?
Well, as you will see in the list in our ranking, all of the countries in the top 25 are high-income economies. Switzerland leads the pack, followed by the United Kingdom, Sweden, the Netherlands, the United States of America. And in a way, that's not surprising that you see the more developed economies up there because they can draw on greater resources when investing in innovation. What is interesting, though, about the top-ranked countries like Switzerland and the United States is that they show a well-rounded performance in the Global Innovation Index. Essentially, they perform well in all pillars of the measurement framework and show little, if any weakness.
Carsten, let's talk about a sectorial focus. Are we able to draw any conclusions around the sectors that have performed really strongly in terms of driving innovation and the sectors that could do better?
Well, I think there it is hard to generalize. Certainly, the innovation that has driven economic growth for much of the past 2 or 3 decades were the information and communication technologies, and they clearly also had an impact on the African continent, as you well see in everyday life. But clearly, every country has its own innovation niche as well as its own innovation needs. So, for example, in many African countries, you have important agricultural innovations. There's a lot of innovation that's going on in the mining sector. So it really ultimately depends on the country and what it is good at.
And which markets would you describe as the markets to watch that are likely to shoot out the lights when it comes to having innovation-driven economies, especially in the African context?
Well, that's a good question. One of the things we do in the Global Innovation Index, we not only look at the overall ranking, but we see how innovation performance of countries compares to their level of GDP per capita, to their level of economic development. And on this metric in Africa, Rwanda, Mozambique, and Malawi stand out, and they essentially show similar performance to some of the middle-income economies. And I would also add Uganda, Senegal, and Kenya to the list that have consistently performed well in the last few years.
Well, that's a very big thank you to Carsten Fink. He joins us from the World Intellectual Property Organization. He's a chief economist.